All right, perfect. So welcome everybody. I am very excited today to talk about our incentive tracker. The incentive tracker is essentially a tool that is provided in the ByDesign platform that allows each of our clients, so you at the corporate level, can create, manage, and track incentives directly in your back office. And this means that you're not going to have to pay for any development or wait for any development. And once the tool itself is activated, it is completely self-service. That means you can go in and configure new incentives. You can update existing incentives. It's all things that you can do directly from your Freedom back office. So just to point out, we do have the one thing that support will need to help you with is activating the tool. Once it's activated, that's when everything else can be done by you. So just know it is a self-service tool after the activation, but our support team can help activate it for you at any time. So you can see here a screenshot of what the incentive tracker looks like in the Freedom back office. So with each of your incentives, there's kind of three main sections. The first one is going to be your incentive basics. So what are the incentive dates? Is it an annual year-long incentive? Is it a short 1 month? Is it a 3 month, a 1 week? You really have the flexibility to set these incentives in any way you choose. And what's really exciting is that before we had the incentive tracker, we really leveraged our comp engine, our compensation engine to drive these things. But the compensation engine is built on the idea of bonus periods. Typically, that's a monthly period. We are seeing more and more weekly periods. But with the bonus periods, you were kind of restricted or limited in the types of incentives that you could offer. You couldn't say, I want to offer an incentive from the 1st through the 15th of the month, because a bonus period encapsulated the entire month. So that was a real big win with this new incentive tracker tool, is that it's completely flexible on the dates. So you decide when it starts, when it ends. You can also decide who gets to participate. Okay, so for many of you, you just have a single rep type, so everybody's going to participate. But if you are leveraging rep types to differentiate between, for example, your traditional reps, and maybe you have an affiliate rep type that is less active, isn't a business builder, more of a sharing versus a building, those two rep types can actually be targeted with separate incentives. You can have a separate targeted incentive for those affiliates and a separate targeted incentive for your business builders. So if you are leveraging rep types, you can certainly leverage the rep type to focus your incentive toward the correct audience. So that's all on the top portion of the screen there. Below that, you're going to see point qualifiers. This is going to be, how do reps earn the incentive? What are the behaviors that you're going to reward? How are they going to qualify for the various rewards? And then the third section down there are the rewards themselves. So the incentive levels, what are they going to earn, and at what threshold do they earn them? You may have an incentive that just has a single prize, and that's fine. You're just going to have a single incentive level there. But for those incentives that have multiple levels of achievement, you can set as many of those levels up as you'd like. Okay, so that's kind of the general overview of the incentive tracker. One of the things that I love about the incentive tracker is, as you're creating it in your back office, you're going to automatically get reporting tools created out of the box. So as I'm building it out in my Freedom back office, the revolution or rep facing reporting is going to automatically be built for me. I don't have to go in and configure this as a secondary step. It's going to automatically be configured based on what I've put into the incentive itself. So you can see here exactly what a rep would see. They can track their own progress, where their points are coming from. So, have I been earning points based on parties, based on personal sales, based on sponsoring activity. That's really great to know because that's also going to show me where my opportunity lives for maximizing the incentive and continuing to earn more. I can see each level of the rewards and whether I have unlocked them or not. You also have the ability at the corporate level to really describe these different levels of rewards and get the reps excited about earning them. Okay, so your marketing team can really have fun here with describing what these are, really getting the teams motivated so that they want to achieve them, and so on. And then finally, outside of my personal progress, I can also track my team progress. So I can see at a glance who on my team has earned any of the levels, how many points have they earned. We've also added a new export function there. So you can literally export it to Excel and pivot it in many different ways. Or they can just use the on-screen reporting within Revolution. Typically, they're going to just use the Revolution reporting that you see here. But for those top leaders that like to do a lot of newsletter recognition and maybe they're also sending their own notes in the mail or texts on achievement and that sort of thing, they may want to export that to a CSV and then pivot it in Excel. But all of this is built out of box as you're designing the incentive. And that's the key, is that it's minimal time on your part to actually setting up these various incentives. And then, of course, you're going to need reporting on your side as well. So there is reporting automatically created in the Freedom back office. So as you're designing your incentive and setting it up, it automatically makes the rep-facing reporting and automatically makes the Freedom reporting for your corporate team. What I love about the Freedom reporting is that it shows the data in a couple of different ways. You're going to be able to see by level. So how many reps have achieved level 1, level 2, level 3. You can actually drill down. So if you click on this, you're going to see who those achievers are. And then you can also see it by qualifier, which is really great. In a former life, before I was with ByDesign, I actually designed incentives for a party plan company, and I would have loved this breakdown by qualifier, because this is really for the analysts who want to see why is an incentive successful, or what pieces of the incentive are working versus not working. This points by qualifier is really going to be insightful for you. So it's going to tell you where the points are being earned across the board. So which of the qualifiers are awarding the most points to the most reps. Again, this is drill down capable, so you can click on that and see a further breakdown. But this is going to be really important because, while the incentive is going on, you're going to want to, event planning, prize awarding, make sure that you're on track for your forecasted achiever numbers. But you're also going to want to know, how can I make this a better incentive? Should I pivot something midstream, or should I just make a note so that my next incentive is designed a little differently? All of that is going to be learned from your Freedom reporting for these incentives. And then finally, you also have the ability to search by a particular rep. So if you are working one-on-one with a rep, if you have sales coaches or regional developers that work with your reps out in the field, they can leverage this tool and search by reps so that they can really help each rep to know where they're at and where the opportunity is for further achievement. All right, so that's kind of the overview on the tool itself and the reporting that's available. Next, I'm going to jump into the qualifiers, or what is the existing out-of-the-box qualifiers or data points that you can design an incentive on. Before I jump into that, want to make sure that we are answering any questions that we have here in the chat. To clarify, this is only monthly based, correct? For example, I can't track someone's activity from the 15th to the 10th of the next. That's actually not accurate, Bart. This incentive tracker does allow you to go from day to day. So you could literally say from the 15th of one month to the 10th of the next month, that's one of the periods. So you can set up incentives day to day. It is not limited to a monthly basis. And that is for the incentive tracker itself. You have the ability to set up that qualification period for a single day, a week, a month, mid-month to mid-month. You really have all the options you want for that date selection. Another question, does it have join date added so that we can set it on the date a consultant joins? Okay, so I'm gonna answer that with a two-part answer. If you mean, can we set an incentive period based on the join date? The answer is no. So I actually got this question earlier this week from one of our clients. They wanted to use the incentive tracker for their fast start period and say that each rep has 30 or 90 days from their own join date. The incentive tracker does not allow you to set qualification periods based on a join date. However, it does allow you to use join date as one of the qualifiers. So once your incentive period is set, then you can say within that incentive period, the join date can qualify them to earn points or maximize points based on that. So join date is available as a qualifier. Join date cannot be used to set an incentive period. Although having that question twice in the same week, now I'm going to add that to our roadmap so that we can potentially add that as a future enhancement to this tool. But as of right now, qualification dates are set by calendar dates. So you have flexibility on day to day, but you can't set it on a rep specific date. Everybody has to have the same qualification date within the targeted rep audience that you're setting the incentive for. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to jump into the qualifiers themselves. And when I say qualifiers, this is how are the reps going to earn? How are you going to be rewarding points that accumulate toward achieving the incentive? That's what I mean when I say qualifiers. And there's a few different groups of qualifiers that we'll want to take a look at. The first is what I'm calling personal rep qualifiers. These are the types of qualifiers that are going to allow you to incentivize a rep based on their own personal activity. Okay, so there's a few different ones here. The first one here is attribute value. And of course, the first one on the list is probably the hardest to explain. But in the ByDesign system, you have the ability to set up what we call rep attributes. And this is a way for you to flag a particular rep or group of reps based on some kind of attribute. Most commonly, this is going to be used for example, you can have a group of founding leaders. So on that group of founding leaders, you would have a rep attribute of founding leader, and that would basically carry through the life cycle of that rep account. So once they're in that founding leader, they are there until you remove them. So that means if you have an attribute that lists out these 20 reps as your founding leaders, in your incentives, you can actually use the founding leader as one of your qualifiers. So you can add ways to earn for your founding leaders that are maybe separate from the rest of your field. Okay, you can also have attributes based on, what package they purchased when they came in, based on exceptions to the comp plan or grandfathering them in. These are all examples of what rep attributes can be. The point that you need to know for the incentive tracker is that any of those attributes can be used in the qualifier. Okay, so it's just one more way of catering an incentive in a unique way for unique groups of reps from your field. Of course, as a proud supporter of Party Plan, we do have Party as one of the rep qualifiers. So you can literally indicate, how many points do they get for each party. An important note here is that you can just say any party, or you can say minimum volume required. That would be really important so that reps don't just create and close empty parties and get points for those. So you should consider having some kind of minimum volume requirement there. And that's how you're going to want to really reward them for true party activity versus just, maximizing any opportunity they have there. And this is a good point at which I can stop and say each one of these qualifiers is going to have unique options and configurations available. So you can see here on the screen for the party, you have the option to require the volume. The next one, which is points per personal volume, you're going to have advanced options. So a lot more options here with this one. So this is going to allow you to reward reps based on their personal volume, but you can also say, only reward volume based on customer purchases. I'm so sorry. I think my team's notifications are jumping in here. So let me just close that. Okay. So for the personal volume, you can say, I only want to award points based on customer volume. Or you can say rep or customer volume. You can include or exclude inventory collections. So this is going to be important for example, if you have sale items that you don't want them to earn the points on, or if you've got business supplies that can be ordered through the cart, you don't want to award points based on those business supplies. Those would be examples of inventory collections. This also is a way that you can double up on points for products that you want to promote. So for example, you can have two qualifiers for personal volume. You can have one that says they get a point for every dollar that they sell across the board. You can have a second one that says give them another point for any of our new bath salt collection. Okay, so this is a unique way to drive specific products, and it's all capable out of the box with the incentive tracker. So you can actually choose to double or triple up on some of the same qualifiers within the same incentive. Okay, so one incentive may have 4 different qualifiers for personal volume, all with slightly different configuration, so that there's across the board points, there's specialized points for inventory. You can even go so far as to say, I want to award points based on first customer purchases. So every new customer that comes in and places their first order, I can get double points for that or additional points for that. These are all just options, okay? I want you to know what's possible. So that's the personal volume. You can also do points based on join date. In this context, it's going to be my own join date. So as a rep, if I join as a new rep during the incentive period, you can award points to me for getting started during this period. And then I kind of already hit on the rep's customer purchases. So the awards are going to be based on the customer purchases. That should be incentive period, not inventive period. And you can also, again, have additional options there. You can indicate a minimum customer count or a minimum order total. You can say, I only want them to award points when a customer purchase is $50 or more. Okay, you can also either award once or you can award recurring based on repetitive customer purchases. So many options, and we're going to dive into those a little bit later in the call. Next up, outside of the rep personal qualifiers, you can also track sponsoring qualifiers. This is going to be rewarding reps as they build their team or bring additional reps into the brand. The easiest one here is going to be points per sponsored rep. That's going to literally just award points for each new rep who enrolls, okay? I personally would prefer, instead of just points per sponsored rep, that you use the points per sponsored rep volume. That's going to ensure that Just because I recruit 10 people during the incentive doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get 10 points for each one of them. But as soon as each one of them reaches $100 in volume, that's when I can earn my points. Okay, so it allows you to specify, do you just want to reward the sponsoring, or do you want to reward based on the volume of those sponsored? Of course, you can also do both. You can say give them 1 point when the new rep joins, and then an additional 10 points once they become active. Okay, so you have the options of mixing and matching these. You can also award points to a sponsor when their downline promotes in rank. So each one of your downline that promotes in rank, you can offer points to the sponsor. You can do this across the board for all rank promotions, or you can specify a rank promotion. This means you can also set up a qualifier for every one of those ranks and say, when you promote to our base rank, you get 1 point, then 2 points, then 3 points. So basically, you're encouraging them to promote multiple times, and each rank promotion at a higher rank is going to reward them with more points. And then finally, there are kind of compensation plan qualifiers. These are going to be, anything based on rank promotion, maintaining rank, or even commissions earned. It may sound silly to think about giving them incentive points based on commissions paid out, but this can be kind of a workaround if you don't see the exact qualifier that you're looking for, but you are paying out a bonus for it in your commission plan. Then you can actually use the payout as the qualifier for the incentive tracker. So while it may not seem like an obvious option, it is a unique way and a kind of a workaround to kind of award incentive points based on the behaviors that you may already be rewarding in your compensation plan. Outside of that, again, a lot of configuration options on each one of these. It can be new rank promotions or re-promotions. It can be consistency for maintaining rank. And you really have the option of combining these in a way that makes sense for your particular promotion. All right, so now you know kind of how to set up an incentive and what the different qualifiers are. I'm going to jump into some real life examples. But before I do that, jumping over to the chat, Christy, great questions. Can specific SKU and pack attributes also be added? At this time, we don't have the inventory attributes as a qualifier in the incentive tracker. We only have the rep attributes. So in order to use the inventory attributes, we could, I'm going to add it to the roadmap so that we can potentially add that. There may also be an option for if your inventory attributes cause a rep attribute to be flagged, then you could use the resulting rep attribute to reward them in the incentive. So until we get the inventory attributes added, a workaround may be that we can adjust your rep attributes to be triggered by an inventory attribute. So I think that's possible. I'll definitely want to dive into your specific example and let's work through that and see if it can work for you. If nothing else, then obviously we'll get it on the roadmap to get it added as a future enhancement. But I think there may be a way to leverage the system in an indirect way to make that work for you. So let's dive into that one-on-one. But again, love the question, love the idea, and we'll get it added to the roadmap. Speaking of roadmap, now's a great time to also let you know that this is a fairly new tool for us. And since we launched it early in 2024, we've already tripled the number of qualifiers that we have available there. We are continuing to add additional qualifiers, but it's based on client feedback. So if you're running into a wall and you're like, I can't make the incentive tracker work for me. We want to know about that because that means there's a gap that we need to fill. So if you're running into trouble, if you find a gap in how to set up these incentives, let us know, because we are in a phase right now where we want to add more and more qualifiers. We want to make it a robust tool that meets all the needs. So if you run into any of those, reach out to support, reach out to myself, let us know what you're trying to do so that we can make sure our tool empowers you to do that. All right, so now I'm going to jump into the examples that we have. So I always like to start with kind of the most obvious, which is an annual incentive. Okay, almost every company out there has some sort of recurring annual incentive, whether it's a trip that you take each year or an exclusive product that is offered that you can only earn through the incentive. Regardless, I do see 90% of our clients have some sort of annual incentive. And prior to the incentive tracker, they were forced to use the bonus engine, which meant every year they had to run a project to get the tracking and to get the points allocated in the correct way. So on an annual basis, you were having to rebuild that. Now with the incentive tracker, as long as you're using the out-of-the-box options, you can adjust your annual incentive each year without even needing to rely on us. So when we look at an annual incentive, typically there's going to be multiple ways to earn, right? With a year-long incentive, you want to maximize that incentive and that motivation, and you want to encourage and motivate as many different types of reps to participate. That's the real strategy behind one of these annual incentives. So you're typically going to have multiple ways to qualify. And then you will typically see multiple incentive levels, although that's not always the case. Starting with the qualifiers. So you can see in my example here, I've got 4 ways to earn. You can earn based on your personal volume, based on parties, based on sponsoring new reps, and based on the volume of those that you have already sponsored. So with the personal sales, you can see here's all the different options you have for setting up that qualifier. So I know I want to reward them based on personal sales. First and foremost, how am I defining the sales? Which volume type do I want to use? Am I just using straight retail sales? Am I using PV, CV, PCV? Whatever the volume types are that you have in your system, those are all the various ways that you can award points for personal volume. Obviously, you need to know how many points per unit. This is going to be something that you see on every single qualifier, is how many points. It's important to really think about the bigger picture strategy. Are you going to have personal volume easier or more difficult to earn than sponsoring reps? Based on my own personal history, we typically made them do more by personal selling than what they would have to do by recruiting. The simple fact of the matter is we want them out there sharing the brand and bringing new people to the business, right? So we would typically reward more points for sponsoring behavior than we would for personal sales. But that also meant that somebody could choose to do it on their own without sponsoring. They just had to really sell more in order to achieve the same number of points. Okay, so how many points per unit is going to be something that you see on every qualifier, and it's important for you to think big picture. How many points do they get for selling versus sponsoring versus rank promotion versus, whatever the qualifiers are that you have. You have the ability to specify the purchaser. So you can say, I only want my reps to earn points for personal sales based on customer purchases. So I can't, as a rep, I would not be able to purchase my own product and get points toward the incentive. You can allow that if you want, but you can also prevent that from happening. Okay. Inventory restrictions. Do you want them to earn based on all inventory, based on only select inventory? And again, this is where you can double up. You can have 1 point for all inventory, but an extra 2 points on our promoted products. You can also have a minimum and maximum volume. This is going to be if you want to say, you get a point for every dollar sold after you reach a minimum of $1,000 sold. Okay, so you have the ability to build in kind of a minimum qualifying volume before they start earning their points. And then another important thing, thinking of the bigger picture, is that you have the ability to cap points. That means you can say a rep can only earn up to 200 points based on personal sales. So if your reward requires 1,000 points, they can only earn 200 on sales. You're basically forcing them to also sponsor or earn points based on rank. Okay, so that is an option to cap the points on any one of these qualifiers. So the next one is parties. Parties is not going to have as many configuration options. Okay, basically there's just a volume minimum threshold. So I only want them to earn based on parties that have at least $300 in sales or $100 in sales. And then if you are using that volume, you need to indicate what volume type you're referencing. Okay, aside from that, the parties one is pretty straightforward. Sponsored rep. This is where you're going to be able to say how many points do you want per sponsored rep. A nuance here and a really interesting configuration is that you can actually choose to insert unique start and end dates. So I ran into this a lot back when I was designing incentives. You would have an incentive that started on July 1st, but then you always get those reps that say, I just recruited somebody on June 20th, and now I'm not going to get the points for them because I recruited them 10 days too early. So we would always add kind of a grace period to the front of any incentive. So if it was launching July 1, we would say anybody that you recruited starting June 1st could count as a new sponsored rep for the incentive period. Okay, so this is just one more way that we're trying to provide you with the tools to configure for those exceptions and those unique scenarios that we know aren't really that unique and do come up all the time on these incentives. And then finally, you've got the sponsored rep volume. This is where you're literally going to look at the volume of the reps that I have personally sponsored and brought into the business. Again, I can specify volume type. I can have a minimum. I can say, am I going to include the first order for that rep or not? I can indicate if it's just their customer orders or all orders. The inventory restriction is there, the cap is there, and this one also has the ability to say new reps only. So back to my point on the start and end dates, if somebody that joined just before the incentive period, if you want them to be considered a new rep for the incentive period, you can do that. And you can also, again, double up on this. You can say, all of my existing sponsored reps are going to contribute 10 points per dollar. But anybody that is new during the incentive period that I've brought in will contribute 20 points per volume. Okay, so there are ways to kind of stack these qualifiers so that I'm further rewarded for my recruiting behavior during the incentive period. And it all goes back to those behaviors. What are you trying to drive? What are you trying to reward with these particular incentives? Before I jump into the next incentive, I'm actually going to switch over to our demo site. As soon as I find my mouse, there we go. I'm going to show you our demo site so that you can kind of see what this looks like. Okay. So if I'm looking at an annual, I knew I was going to be logged out. I waited too long. All right. So now I'm looking at one of these annual incentives. So you can see here at any time I can come in and update these dates. Okay. Typically, you're not going to do that. Typically, with an annual incentive, once the dates are confirmed, that's what they are. But you may find that you want to extend it for whatever reason. I've literally had to extend incentives based on natural disasters, based on, technology outages that may or may not have happened, based on product supply issues. There are many reasons why you may choose to extend it. You can come in and do that at any time. What I also like to use these start and end dates for is for the modeling of incentives before they go live. So let's say you have an incentive that you're wanting to start January 1st of 2025. In a non-production environment like a sandbox, you can come in and configure it for January 1st of the current year and see what would have happened. Okay, who would have achieved based on real historic data performance. Okay, so the start and end dates can help you to actually model your incentives as well. This is something I really recommend because it's going to help you to know if you're over rewarding in a particular area or under rewarding in a particular area. You by now probably know your field well enough to know who your typical achievers are. Okay, so modeling this based on previous dates will help you to see, are my usual suspects still going to achieve or are they not, and why? Am I seeing a wave of new achievers? And if so, how are they achieving? These are all things that you're going to want to consider when you're designing your incentives. And so again, your analysts that are designing and strategizing on how to motivate your field can leverage model data based on real performance using the start and end dates for a past period. Although, remember, you should do this in a non-production environment, because if you set something up for January of last year and you're doing it in production, you're going to actually see that in your system on production. So just a cautionary tip there. So you can see here is the general setup. And then below that, you're going to see the various qualifiers and my various incentive rewards. For each of these qualifiers, as I click into them, this is where you're going to start seeing those additional configuration options. Okay, so again, if I'm looking at points per personal volume, I can literally select which volume type. I can put a minimum threshold in. I have advanced options where I can say I only want to use customer purchases. I only want to use customer first purchases or new customers within the period. So the difference being new customers within the period, but all of their orders, or new customers with their first order only, or all customers regardless of how long they've been a customer of mine. These are all options that you have. Customer type. If you have a VIP loyalty program, anything that you may be leveraging customer types for, you can reward differently there. So you can literally say to your field, you're going to earn 1 point for every dollar that your customers purchase, but 2 points for all of your VIP customers. This is going to motivate your reps to upgrade all of their customers to VIP. And that's going to make both the incentive successful, but also help drive participation in your existing VIP loyalty program. Okay, those are just a couple of the examples here, but I'm trying to show you kind of some real life what's possible examples with some of these tools. So similarly, if I were to go back to my my qualifiers here for the sponsored rep volume, this is one that you have those advanced criteria. You can say for sponsored rep volume, is it just going to be the customers or the reps as well? Which volume do I want to look at? Is there a point value? So these are all ways that you can customize each one of the incentives, the qualifiers, to really meet your unique needs. I always say, start with your strategy first. Think about which behaviors you want to reward, then back into the qualifiers and look at the configuration options to see how to really maximize the qualifiers to meet the needs of your specific incentive. While we're here, I also want to just show you what the incentive levels looks like. So for each one of these rewards, I can actually indicate, what is the point threshold they have to receive and what is the name of the reward with a description. That's going to be really important because that's what they see on the reporting for the rep. So as a rep, as I'm tracking my progress among these levels, this is where the marketing team can really, entice the rep and motivate them to work based on the description of what they're going to achieve. All right. So that's what I wanted to show you on the annual incentive. I'll pause for a moment. Christy has another question. How does the money spent work with multi-currency? Does it automatically use the exchange rate in Freedom? Christy, that is a fantastic question, and I actually do not know the answer to that. So I can get you the answer. We'll just need to tap into support. So the Freedom support team should be able to answer that for you. I will also personally follow up to make sure I get you that answer, but I apologize. I don't know how currency conversion is taken into account. Does it factor in VAT? Yes, taxes, whether it's VAT or just simple sales tax, those are already configurable. So when you're setting the volume that you want to reward them on, remember there's the PV, CV, retail sales. You can say retail sales plus tax or retail sales minus tax. You also can include or exclude shipping if you want. So the taxes, shipping, those are all configurable. You can choose whether you want to include that in the volume or not. But I'll need to get you an answer on the currency and exchange rate. It's a great question. All right, so that's the annual incentive. Next up, I'm going to jump into weekly incentives because we're going back to the beginning of the call. That's one of the things I love about the incentive tracker is that you're not limited to only doing it on a monthly basis. You can literally say, I want to reward my reps and offer an incentive the week of Black Friday, right? Very relevant. We're coming up on it right now. You can say, we're going to offer promotions for your customers during Black Friday, but we're also going to reward our reps who choose to leverage those promotions and work their business during this time frame. So you can say, I want this incentive to work from the 21st through the 30th. So for 9 days only, they're going to be earning points based on personal volume, sponsored rep volume, and customer purchases. Okay. Obviously, with a week-long incentive, you're going to have much lower thresholds for your rewards, or you're going to have much higher points that are awarded based on the behaviors. So just make sure that you're keeping it relative to the time frame. But you can have a 9-day incentive period over Black Friday. You can also say, I want to have an incentive over Memorial Day weekend and literally have a 3-day incentive over Memorial Day weekend based on who is out there working their business during these times. You may take a different approach and say, I don't want to reward them during those busy seasons. I want to reward them for the first week of January when nobody is typically working their business. That's when I want to inject some activity and motivate my reps to get in there and work. So I'm going to have a special incentive that runs the 2nd through the 10th of January. You can also, because this is all configuration based and you don't have to rely on development, you can react to what's going on in the business right now. Let's say it is June 15th. And you are nowhere near your sales goal for June. You're tracking down year over year, month over month, whatever. You are just not seeing the activity that you want to see out of the field. Well, it's the 15th, so you can go in and say, I'm going to have an incentive that starts on the 16th, runs through the 30th. Or you may say from the 20th to the 30th. So it doesn't necessarily have to be based on what's happening out in the world. It can be based on your business alone. You can literally go in at any point and use an incentive as a catalyst to try to spur activity from your field. You're going to set it up in the same way that you do the annual, okay? It's just that your start and end dates are going to be much closer together. Everything else is the same. You're still going to use your qualifiers and your levels for the reward in the same way. But what's great about it is as you have these kind of shorter term incentives, they are going to stack with your annual incentives. And by that, I mean the points themselves don't count toward both. Your annual incentive has points, your weekly incentive has points. They don't cross over. Okay, so they're always going to be calculated separately. But the way that it's going to be presented to the rep is where the stacking is going to come into play. So if I go out and I look at an actual rep back office, let me jump in here to a rep's back office. Okay. Now I'm going to jump in to her Revolution. So now I'm logged into the rep back office as this rep. And now I'm going to be able to go in and actually see the incentives and the tracking for those incentives. As soon as my page loads up here. Of course, live demos takes forever to load. Okay, here we go. So now I'm going to go to my incentive tracker, and you'll see when I get to the incentive tracker, it's going to show me all of the various incentives that are currently applicable. Okay, so right now, because it's the 21st, my Black Friday bonanza is in play, as well as my trip to Paris. So this is my annual trip and my week-long Black Friday bonanza. If I also had a fall event that was, September, October, November, I would see it listed here as well. There's no limit to the number of incentives that can be active at any given time. So as a rep, I can see every single incentive that I'm eligible for, and then I can track my progress for each one separately. Okay, so if I wanted to see where I stand in the Black Friday bonanza, I would click there. If I want to see where I stand in the trip to Paris, I'm going to click there. Regardless of what event it is or what incentive, the tracking is going to be consistent. So I'm always going to be able to see my own progress, each one of the levels and whether I've achieved them. And then I can look at my downline to see where they are in tracking. It's no different when I go to my Black Friday bonanza. I'm going to have the same reporting tools available to me. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say that you can stack incentives. But it's important to know the points are always separate. Okay, so if I've set up a qualifier for my annual incentive, but not in the Black Friday, those points are not going to overlap. The achievement is separate, but the reporting and the experience is going to be the same. Jumping back over. Okay, the last example that I want to talk about are real-time pivots. And I've mentioned it a few times already in the webinar so far, but there are going to be times when you need to pivot midstream. Okay, if the incentive is not accomplishing what you thought it might accomplish, or you had unique situations, product supply issues, technology issues, natural disasters, whatever it might be, you may want to go in and pivot. You may also want to pivot on the earnings without changing your start and end dates. Okay, so yes, you can change your start and end dates, but there are options for pivoting and changing behavior inside of the incentive. So going to my annual incentive period. Let's say that the annual incentive period is already set from June 1st to July 31st. So they've got a full calendar year that they can earn toward this incentive period. But at some point during that period, maybe it's the first month or the last month or just a kind of a dead month in the middle there, I want to offer double points. I can do that with the incentive tracker. So I've already got my annual incentive. I've already got the existing qualifier that's going to award 50 points per US dollar sold. I can go in and add a second new qualifier to give an additional 50 points per US dollar. But the qualifier of the existing one is going to be the full incentive period. The second new qualifier is only going to be for the month of January. Okay, that's how you can say for the month of January, your personal sales points are doubled. Because what you've done is you've kept the standard points that are going throughout the incentive. You've added a second one that doubles it. Okay? Similarly, you may choose to add a new qualifier mid-incentive period. So this isn't necessarily doubling the points for the qualifiers you've already added. It's adding a new qualifier. For example, maybe you're adding a new product line mid-incentive and you want to help drive sales of that specific product. So for the annual incentive period of June 1st to July 31st, you can choose to keep everything as it is and then add a new qualifier based on the specific product you want to sell. Or, it might not be product based. It might be recruiting based. Maybe you've decided you want to add a sponsoring element where there wasn't one before. Maybe you want to add a rank promotion element that wasn't there before. You have the freedom to add qualifiers at any time, even after the incentive period starts. If you want, you can choose for the new qualifier to be retroactive. So if you're adding a new qualifier in the middle of an incentive, you can say, I want to go back to the start of the incentive and reward them for any activity this new qualifier would have rewarded had it been in place. That's very easy to do by aligning the start and end dates. Or if you don't want to do that, you would have a start date of whatever the month is that you're adding the new qualifier. This is going to help you to avoid those situations again where, we're 6 months into an annual incentive, you have a new rank promotion, but somebody who rank promoted last month feels like they missed out, right? By making it retroactive to the start of the incentive period, you can avoid that. Now, at the same time, the other side of that coin is you want to make sure that whatever you're adding is going to drive behavior versus just rewarding them further for something that they may have already been rewarded on. Okay, but that's going into the strategy of incentive design, not the tool itself. So these are just a couple of examples of what you can do within an incentive period to pivot, to throw some gasoline on the fire to make sure that you're really getting the results that you want. The last thing I will end with here are the resources. We have some great documentation that helps you to configure the incentive tracker. There's 3 or 4 articles in our knowledge base. We call it the KB. So our KB has multiple articles to help you there. I've also recorded at least one, maybe I don't know if I've recorded that second one yet or not, but we've got some videos that will also help you in setting up these incentives. So check out those resources. Make sure that you leverage those to help you know what's possible and to know how to specifically configure your incentive. All right, so now I'm going to use the last 3 minutes that we have available for some questions. Looks like there is some in the chat here. Let's see. Can point qualifiers be nested? So if qualifier XYZ displays the total points based on the sub-qualifiers under it. Okay, so a personally enrolled that is upgraded from XYZ to ABC. We'd want them to all roll up under one main parent qualifier to tally the points. I think it's going to depend on the specific examples, but I can say, generally speaking, yes, you can stack the qualifiers. The stacking is going to be done in the configurations for each of the qualifier. So not just having points for new reps sponsored, but having points for new reps who achieve a new rank within the incentive period. You're not going to use the new rep qualifier, you're going to use the new rank qualifier, but one of the configuration options within that is new reps only. So the stacking is done within the configuration of the qualifiers, not necessarily at the qualifier level. So you can't say, I want qualifier 1, 2, and 3 to all have to be true in order to get a point. That's not how the tool is set up. Not to say we can't do that down the road, but for right now, it's really going to be the configuration within each qualifier is where that stacking of behavior is going to occur. I definitely would love to talk through that with you one-on-one, or you can reach out to support and they can work with you on it. But I'm about 80% sure that we can handle most of the stacking needs using the newly configured qualifiers. If we run into a gap there, again, that's a great opportunity for us to get it on our roadmap, update our tool so that it works for you. So to restate my answer, you can't necessarily stack qualifiers at the qualifier level, but you can stack behaviors using the configurations within each qualifier. Let's see. Points for customer purchases. Can we do an amount range? Say if customer purchases amounts 250 to 500, they will earn 10 points. 500 and up will earn 20. Yes, that is definitely possible. The way you would configure that is you're going to actually double up on the volume qualifier. Your first volume qualifier is going to be for customer purchases with a minimum of 250 and a maximum of 500, and you're going to award 10 points for those. You're going to have a second qualifier for customer purchases, minimum of 500 with no maximum. That's where the 20 points are going to come in. So yes, you can create bands of achievement and reward additional points for the higher thresholds. You're just going to need to create a unique qualifier for each one of those bands. When we count new people, we only count them when they place their first order, and they are counted as new on the month that they enter the first order. Is that also handled without development? Yes, Carlos, great question. And that is something that you can do with configuration. You're not going to need development for that. Basically, what you would do is instead of just using the new rep sponsored qualifier, you're going to use the new rep volume qualifier. So it will basically, and in that qualifier, this is where that stacking comes in. The new rep volume can be configured to only count or separately count for new reps within the qualification period. So you could set up a qualifier based on new rep volume that says they have to have at least one order and they have to be new within the incentive period. That's how you would configure that qualifier for the incentive. All right, we are 2 minutes over. Were there any other questions that we wanted to cover before we drop for today?
Cool things about this is you can
All right. Well, if you think of anything, feel free to email me directly, set up some time with me for a growth call. You can reach out to support as well. They have all the information on this incentive tracker so they can answer your questions. For those of you who are joining us who are not yet clients, these are some questions that you can ask of Dan or whomever you might be working with during your sales process. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm so happy that you were able to make it. I love the information that we were able to share. And I look forward to seeing you on our next call. Thanks guys. Have a great day.